He asks Yosef to do him this favor after his death to bury him in Eretz Yisrael in Heaven and Maris Machpelah. Then he blesses Yosef, he blesses his children, Yosef's children, and he blesses all of his children. But in the middle there is an interruption. In his conversation with Yosef, he suddenly goes back to a story that happened 50 years earlier. He tells Yosef, his son, in Egypt, V'ani bevoyi mi padon meisa alai roch. When I was coming back from Padan Aram, where I was 20 years love of meisa alai Rachel, Rachel died on me. And Yaakov describes how he buried her in Beis Lechem. The commentators wonder, why does this verse come in? This happened 50 years ago. Yaakov is discussing his pending death. He's asking his son Yosef, the prime minister, to bury him in Hebron. He's going to bless Yosef and his grandchildren and his children. Why suddenly does he start talking about Rachel, her death, and her burial in Beis Lechem? The Rambam, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman, the 13th century great Talmudist, leader, physician, philosopher, biblical commentator, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman from Spain, in his commentary on Chumash says, Yaakov anticipated that Yosef would be upset. You ask me to take you from Egypt to Eretz Yisrael and bury you in Hebron, in the Maris Machpelah with the Avos and the Amos. Why didn't you do this for my mother, Rachel? So Yaakov had to explain himself at this point and say, 50 years ago when your mother died, I was alone in the world. I had a bunch of little children. Binyamin was just born. He was a baby without a mother. I had a huge entourage of children, of infants, of cattle, of animals. I couldn't go to Hebron. It's a half-a-day journey, but it was too much. So I had to bury her right there. So I buried her in Beis Lechem. Rabbeinu Avadia Siforno, the 15th century great Italian sage and philosopher and rabbi and scholar, in his commentary on Chumash, the Siforno gives a little bit of a different twist. He says, V'ani bevoyi mi padon meisa alai Rachel. I was too sad. I didn't have the energy, the stamina to be able to carry her to Hebron. I was just so downtrodden and dejected. Meisa alai Rachel. She died on me. The Gemara says, Einisha Mesa Ella Labaila Lakol Yesh Tvura Chutz Me'eshus Nurim. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, there's a substitute for everything in life. Besides the woman you married in your youth, your first wife, the woman you chose as your first wife, there's no substitute for that. Lakol Yesh Tvura Chutz Me'eshus Nurim. Rachel's death affected Yaakov in the most powerful and devastating way. The Sephorno says, Yaakov told Yosef, since that day, a void remains in my heart. I simply did not have the vigor to take her to Hebron, and therefore I buried her again right there. But it's Rashi's interpretation that really became entrenched in the imagination of the Jewish people, taught to every young Jewish child. Rashi gives another interpretation. Rashi says that Yaakov told Yosef, you might ask why I did not bring Rachel to be buried in Maris Machpelah. And Rashi says, Yaakov told him, I know that you have resentment in your heart against me. So I want you to know that what I did was not motivated by selfish reasons. Al pi hadibur. It's what Hashem wanted. And Rashi goes on to explain that when the Jews would be exiled from Jerusalem after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, hundreds of years from now, they will be expelled from their capital city. They're going to go out into exile. They're going to pass Kever Rachel in Beis Lechem, the outskirts of Jerusalem. They're going to pray there. And Rachel will then come out of her grave and she will weep for her children, pray for her children, plead for her children. And she would cry for the Jewish people, and this would ultimately result and an ultimate goal and an ultimate redemption. Right. Rashi was perturbed by the fact that Yaakov had this conversation with Yosef now, 50 years after the event. Why did they not have this conversation all the years? Why did they never speak about this? Why did Yaakov never explain to Yosef why he buried his mother in Beis Lech? Rashi says, Yaakov said, I know you have resentment. So why didn't you bring this up 50 years ago? It's not good to keep resentment in your heart. You're upset at your father, why don't you bring it up? You know your son is upset at you, talk to him about it. Why now suddenly when he needs a favor, he says, by the way, let me deal with that resentment. Why not speak about it 50 years? Today we live in a time, everybody will tell you, right? You have resentment, talk about it. The Rambam says in Hilchos Deis Perek Vav, Lo sisna sachicha bilvavech. Talking about it is not the issue. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Don't keep grudges. Don't harbor resentment. Talk about it. Get it out there. Yaakov Avinu, why maintain this? The answer is, I heard this myself. I heard this when I was a yeshiva bacher. I heard this explanation from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Shabbos Parshas Vayechi, Tavshin Mem Zayin, 1987, 86 or 87. It's very emotional. Yosef trusted his father. Yosef knew that if he loved Rachel, Yaakov certainly loved Rachel. Vayev Yaakov is Rachel, and Yaakov would have done anything to bury her in Hebron. If he did not bury her in Hebron, he had a good reason. Yosef trusted Yaakov. He did not think that Yaakov was careless and clueless and selfish, chas v'shalom. He did not suspect Yaakov. He knew that Yaakov must have a good reason. And there was no need to bring up a very painful moment. But now, when Yaakov was asking Yosef to bury Yaakov in Hebron, Yaakov says, Yedei ani sheyesh belibcha alai. He doesn't say, Yedei ani sheyesh b'machshavtecha alai. I don't think that you have something in your mind against me. You know that I would have done anything for her. I probably did what I had to do and it was the right thing. But emotionally, it's bringing up a trauma. Emotionally, this event is triggering something very painful. Are you upset at me that I did the wrong thing? No, I know you're not. You really believe that I did whatever I can. But belibcha, emotionally, there's pain. It's disheartening. You're not content. You're hurt. There's ill feeling, not ill feeling in a sense of resentment, of a grudge. It's just bringing up the pain of the reality. It's not about judging me. It's the reality. Belibcha. That's why it actually uses the word belibcha. I remember the Rebbe said that. The heart. It's not a mind issue. It's not that I'm upset at you. I'm making calculations. You did the wrong thing. You don't care about Rachel. No. It's painful. This is what Yaakov addressed. This is what Yaakov addressed to Yosef. And that's why Rashi says he told him something unique. If he would have just told him what the Ramban says or what the Sepharno says, it's a rational justification, but the pain is still there. It hurts. Why was my mother deprived from the opportunity? So that's why Yaakov told him something special. And what did Yaakov say? If your mother was given a choice, you knew your mother, Rachel. You were 9 years old when she died. If your mother was given a choice, option number 1, you could remain in the burial place of Adam and Chava, Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, your husband Yaakov and Leah. The Avos Ha'umah, the matriarchs and the patriarchs who built the Jewish nation, Ha'avos Heinin Amerkava, the founding fathers and mothers of the Jewish people, whose divinity, whose holiness, whose righteousness is beyond human estimation. That was option 1. Option 2, you would be buried alone, far away from them. Far away. Beis Lech, a half a day journey, alone. In your grave. But as your children will be sent into exile, and they'll pass your grave. They'll find comfort. They'll find solace, crying on their mother's shoulders, weeping in their mother's bosom, feeling the embrace, the tears, the hug of the Yiddish mom of Rachel. Which would she choose, Yosef? My Tayyana Yosef, which one would your mother choose? Would she choose to be with the Avos and the Emayos for thousands of years? Would she choose to be with her children? Of course, Yosef knew the answer. He knew his mother. What made Rachel the quintessential Jewish mother, the matriarch of Klal Yisrael? Rachel happily, enthusiastically would give up to be there for her children. And which children? Children who sinned. Children who betrayed the words of the Nevi'im. Children who betrayed the Ratzon Hashem, and therefore they were deserving of Churban Beis HaMikdash. They went into Galus B'pnei Chateinu because they rebelled, because they broke the covenant that they made with the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's why they were expelled. But for a mother, that doesn't make a difference. You tell a mother, oh, this kid is a rotten potato. Forget about him. Let him go deal. Let him go find his own life. Maybe some fathers would say that, and even that, it's very rare for a healthy father to do so. But a mother doesn't sever cords ever. A mother's heart never detaches from a child. So even the greatest sinners of Israel, Rachel, would enthusiastically embrace option number 2, just to be able to be there for the Jewish people, to give them that little extra comfort and solace that she could provide to them on their way to Galus. When Yosef heard this, he was soothed. The pain was eliminated because he realized that it's not Yaakov had a justification. It wasn't a b'di'evet. It was a lechatchila. This was the shlichus of Rachel. This was the schus of Rachel. This is what Rachel would have wanted and desired. This would have been her greatest privilege. It would have been much more painful for her to be in an environment of holiness and allow her children to be alone, bereft, in solitariness, in pain and agony, and she cannot be there with them.